Alright guys, welcome back to Quantum's top 5 weapons for PvP, where we look at some of the best weapons that I think personally are the most effective in 1v1 duels in Dark Souls 3. So I'm sorry that it's taken me a little while to compile this video, but I was really on the fence. I mean, I really didn't think that this weapon would be number 2. It really surprised me, but you can't deny results. And after a little bit of further analysis on the weapon, looking at the moveset, looking at its ability to counter other builds, I figured, you know what, I can't hate on a weapon that can produce results. So yeah, I mean, if it deserves a number 2 spot, it deserves a number 2 spot. And it was surprising to me, and this may change over time. I mean, the game is still in the beginning of its life cycle. We're going to be discovering new things as the game evolves. But for right now, I really think that the Dragon Slayer Sword Spear is a weapon that can be quite versatile and adaptable to any PvP fight that you kind of run into. And the reason I say that is because when we actually look at the breakdown of the weapon, it does a decent amount of damage, it's got a well-versed and versatile move set, and it can counter other builds like I explained earlier. So let's take a look at why it can do all these things, starting off with the move set. So even though I never really use it, the one-handed move set of the weapon, the R1 is a standard thrust, like a spear. You know, it's good for spacing, good for poking. You know, you can kind of condition your opponent, keep them at a relatively good distance. You can try to catch rollaways, stuff like that with this poke. It's fairly far-reaching. The R2, which is delayable, is a horizontal sweep. Not the best, but can help you control the space in front of you. And again, it's more of a psychological thing with the delay. But I overall wouldn't think that it's really all that good. The rolling R1 can actually be quite decent if you and your opponent are stuck in like a rolling battle. The overhead kind of smackdown of the weapon is quite fast and can catch enemy rolls and such. To punish the rolls, which is quite good. The two-handed moveset, though, is what we primarily use, and the R1 is this overhead attack, which is kind of like the glaive, and much like the glaive, watch what happens with my hands when I do it. My hands move to the bottom of the weapon, and I also kind of step forward a little bit, so the weapon actually has quite a decent amount of range, and you can definitely use that to your advantage to space out your opponent, keep them honest, prevent them from kind of just rushing you down without any presence of mind of what you're going to do. And what's also unique about this weapon is it appears it has some, not very many, but some hyper armor frames. So enemies who depend on getting in close to you to get attacks in, and by that I mean, you know, like the fast weapons like an S-Stock, a Goddard Twin Sword, stuff like that, your attack is still going to come out if you're like mid-attack. So if you see someone approaching you and they're rolling towards you, you know, enemies love to use the Goddard Twin Swords to spam the rolling R1, or L1, sorry. It's one of the best attacks in the game, as we outlined in our previous video. But if you throw this out to kind of keep them honest, even if they come out with the L1 and hit you, you're going to hit them with your Dragon Slayer Sword Spear. Since the Goddard Twin Sword usually doesn't have, or has none, no hyper armor, you're going to stagger them. Even if you take damage first, your weapon attack is likely still going to come out. And if you stagger them with the first hit, you can combo them with the second hit. So you're going to end up coming out on top with that trade. And this is what I mean by the sword's ability to counter other builds, which is what makes it kind of consistent in some PvP battles. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a weapon you kind of want to be overly aggressive with because enemies can easily space out and roll away from your attacks. It's more of a weapon where you want to dictate the pace of the match and kind of play a little bit more conservative, not really aggressive rushdown. And don't get me wrong, yes, you can always parry. I mean, I'm not a big parrier, I don't believe in it. I hate people who spam parries. It's the cheapest way to win, but that's just my opinion. I know I know it's in the game and you have to deal with it, but that's just me. I like to two-hand my weapons. I like to outclass or, you know, play a little bit more tactically in terms of rolling and punishing of attacks, but that's just me. So with that said, let's take a look at the rest of the moveset. The R2 is actually a delayable thrust, you know, and you can make it come out quite fast. What's also unique is if you unlock off of your opponent, you can actually readjust the thrust. So you can kind of chase down or catch enemies just trying to like roll around you. So it is really good in that sense as well. The rolling R1 isn't really the best because the weapon doesn't really have a lot of range. I mean, it can definitely catch opponents if you have them on the run, but I usually wouldn't throw it out there because you can get punished if you miss, and the recovery frames of it is not the best. So let's take a look how soon we can roll. If we spam circle, yeah, we have to kind of wait until after our weapon is high up in the air, and then we have to wait about another half a second before we're able to roll. So if the enemy dodges the R1 rolling attack while two-handed, it's easy for them to kind of punish you if they've already recovered from their roll. So be very mindful of that. So now that we've analyzed the moveset, overall though, it's pretty good. Let's take a look at the damage we can do with this weapon. So at base, with our stats the way it is, which I should also mention, we did respec just a little bit. Our health is up to 39 now. Our strength and dex are both at 40 hard cap, and our faith was actually boosted down. I don't know why I said boosted, lowered down to 16, and we're using the priestess ring for the extra 5 faith. Mainly because we only really use deep protection, and then we switch out to another weapon. But if we're using this weapon, the sword spear, we do have to keep the priestess ring equipped. So with that said, let's take a look at what happens when we max buff the weapon. So starting off, when we equip the Lloyd sword ring, we gain an extra 50 points of damage from 504 to 554. Okay. You can't buff this with a resin, but it does have a special attack that is quite good, and we'll take a look at that in a second. So overall, this weapon is doing about 650 damage when we apply all of our buffs, and if you actually do the special attack with the weapon, you're going to go up to 743 points of damage, and this buff lasts for about 12 to 15 seconds, I think it's 15 seconds. So you can definitely do some decent damage, and since it's lightning damage, it is quite good. One other thing I forgot to mention, I just did it, is the running R1 attack with this weapon is kind of resemblant of the katana, which is another reason why it's so good. Be mindful though, it is easy to parry running attacks for the most part, so you might get parried, but the running thrust is really, really fast, and it does a decent amount of damage, right? It has a good amount of range, it's really fast, it's hard to kind of see when your opponent is doing it, so it can definitely do some significant damage. Not to mention that even if you have only 1 FP left, you can still do the weapon buff with full effect. And if you are able to hit somebody with that lightning, because the buff of the weapon does actually bring down a lightning strike, the lightning strike itself does a lot of damage. Depending on the enemy's defense, again, it's going to do maybe around 350 to 500 points of damage, which is quite significant. And if you've never seen it before, you're likely going to get hit by it. It is relatively easy to dodge. All you have to do is kind of roll as soon as the weapon gets lifted up in the air. So don't depend on it as a go-to kind of thing to kill opponents off. But if there's space between you and your opponent maybe might be in a ring swap screen or trying to activate a spell or do a pyromancy or something like that, yeah, bust out that L2 attack and you might actually clip him for a decent amount of damage. So that is how the build breaks down, guys. Our armor has more or less stayed the same. Again, we're just adjusting armor for the weights to be under 70%. And yeah, I mean, let's get into some matches and see how the weapon performs. Alright guys, so here we go with the actual PvP battles, and during this session I played 15 matches in a row for the recording, and surprisingly we won 14 out of the 15, and the one that we lost was actually just due to a stupid error, and I actually summoned the guy for a rematch. If you watch my streams, you know that if I lose to somebody, I like to summon them for a rematch, just to maybe use a different weapon to counteract, because while I said that this weapon does counter a lot of different builds, there is still some things that it's going to lose to, and one of the things that it struggles with, as you can see in this first battle, is a heavy shield. Now, don't get me wrong, when I summoned the guy back for the match that we lost, we ended up using the same weapon, but in general, you're not likely to win every single match you play, and I was really surprised that we actually won 14 out of the 15 battles. Usually you might lose 2 or 3 matches for every 10 you fight, due to other factors like lag or getting a random parry or something like that. But like I said in part 1, where we discussed why this weapon should be number 2, is because I found it surprisingly consistent. It actually is somewhat hard to parry as long as you don't try to be a little bit too predictable with the running attack. I mean, don't get me wrong, the running attack is really OP. One of the best things about the katana is its running attack, right? The washing pole, the Uchi katana, Chaos Blade. The running attack is really, really strong. It comes out fast, it does a lot of damage, it's hard to predict, and it has good range. This weapon has all those things going for it, as you can see there with the running attack. So it is extremely good, but like I said, it is sometimes easy to be parried. Running attacks in general, from no matter what weapon you're using. If you fight somebody who's good at parrying, you have to be a little bit more mindful of the situation. So just be wary of that. But overall, in general, I mean, this weapon, as you saw, we fought it up against a great shield, and we were able to just power through it. Here we're fighting an ultra great sword. This guy was a little bit too aggressive with his ultra great sword, and as a result, we were able to play a little bit more reactive and adaptive. We summoned him again. just because I didn't know it was actually him, because when I do PvP fights, I just mash X on whatever summon signs I see up at the top of the Pontiff area there. So I ended up summoning this guy again by accident. But you know what? I'll give him the rematch, right? I'm more than willing to do that. So this time around, we'll see if he can improve any bit. We end up trading with him there, and there you can see an example of the hyper armor. We would normally have been staggered out of an attack, right, with an ultra greatsword hitting us. But since we were already in the startup of our attack animation, we're able to trade with him. And there again, we ended up trading with him. So this weapon can be really good to kind of bait out enemy attacks and get the benefit of a trade, right? We do a significant amount of damage, especially with our buffs equipped. And if we end up actually staggering the opponent with like a normal R1 overhead attack there, we will end up hitting them with the second hit and doing a lot of damage. So this guy, I don't know how he hit me with the jumping R1 or R2 or whatever it is. I was clearly outside of the hitbox range, but I mean, you know, Dark Souls 3, right? It's in every game. So there you can see this guy's utilizing the running thrust with the katana. He knows how good it is, and I don't know why he's trying to spam out lightning, but we're going to be able to chase him down, put him on the front foot a little bit. And the pace of the match definitely will shift back and forth. And like I said, once enemies give you space, feel free to bust out that buff. Be mindful though, if there's about a medium range, you definitely don't want to be throwing it out because enemies can see it and rush you down. So this was a little bit of a unique situation. We ended up hitting him for full damage, but he still was able to parry us. I think there's some lag factor going on there, but it is what it is. You know, once in a while you will get parried. Here he gives us a lot of space again. I'm going to try to throw some throwing knives at him to finish him off, as he's pretty much at low health. Got him on the rolling game now, so we can kind of condition him. He knows, you know, anything that touches him is going to kill him. So he's going to be playing a little bit more cautious, trying to run around a little bit more, and we're going to try to exploit that as we maybe try to punish a roll or something like that. So he's running at us, and again, I don't know what his plan was there, trying to catch us maybe, but you know, just be mindful of your situation and you're going to come out on top. So once again, you're fighting up against a katana, or we're fighting up against a katana. Ended up trading with him there with his great Chaos Fireball, and you can see like we pretty much did the same damage. He's probably using obviously like a Hex build, like a high faith / magic build, a +10 Pyromancy Flame. His Pyromancy did a lot of damage to us, the Great Chaos Fireball, but our weapon art did, again, a lot of damage. Here we just barely missed him, and he was able to catch us because the Pyromancy does come out faster. He's probably using like a Sage Ring or something like that. But again, don't worry too much. Look at that. I mean, we can stagger enemies out. The damage is a lot, especially with enemies that don't wear a lot of heavy armor. Again, don't really try to use that rolling R1 when it's two-handed a lot. It's not very good. And there you can see an example of how easy it is to dodge and how enemies can approach you if you try to whip out that attack at close range. Now, it does have a little bit less recovery frames than most people would think, so you are able to usually roll out of enemy attacks before they hit you. But don't risk it if they're at medium range. Just don't bother whipping it out. Wait till they're kind of far away from you. If they end up approaching you, then you can whip it out because it'll end up hitting them. And if they're too far away from you, the weapon art won't even reach them. So all in all, you know, the weapon art is decent, but the main reason you're casting it is for the extra lightning damage. As you guys saw when we were breaking down the weapon, it gives you an extra 100 points of damage essentially. And of course, I mean, if enemies are stuck in attack animations with heavy weapons, as you saw right there, it's easy to punish them for the attack and get a lot of damage out in the process. So here we're going up against another small weapon, and you can really see the diversity of this weapon. It's able to kind of hang with the best of them, so to speak, right? We can hang with medium weapons, heavy weapons, as you've seen, and even smaller weapons. And this guy obviously is going to try to bust out a few parries on us. Anyone who uses small weapons usually does. There you can see it. So we just have to be mindful of that in the fight, obviously. Here, again, catching the rolls with the long-reaching R1. He gave us some space, so we're going to try to hit him out of his attack. He actually was very smart to do the L2 or the R2 delayed attack with the axe. And if the attack was a straight sword, he would have ended up hitting us on our roll to punish us. But again, we're just going to chase him down. Again, the running attack with this weapon, just like a katana, so strong, able to catch people easily when they're trying to roll away or run away. Here you can see this guy. He was running at me as I think was eating a piece of grass, so I don't think I got many of my buffs off. But again, just keeping enemies on the front foot, you can see the damage we can do, especially, I mean, if you parry somebody or break their guard like I just did there, you're doing a ton of damage. This guy went to heal, so, you know, we're going to switch to the short sword to chase him down and finish him off. And, I mean, Not too much else to say about that. But not really a GG, so yeah, it is what it is. This is the fight that we ended up losing. The one fight out of the 15 matches we ended up losing was this guy. And we saw a summon sign, so we summoned him again. And the reason we lost is because we were being a little bit too overly aggressive. I actually was at about half health and he was almost dead. And I just got cocky and tried to finish him off with that lightning bolt attack there. And he ended up doing the weapon art with the, what is that? I forget what it's called. Oh my goodness. How do I forget that weapon? The Great Lance. Sorry, the Great Lance. He ended up doing the weapon art with the Great Lance, which is just like a running attack on you and it hits you multiple times. And I was like just underneath half health, and I think it ended up like taking off or just getting me down to virtually no health. And then I kind of got into a little bit of a panic mode and made a mistake and tried to roll. And then he punished me because the weapon is pretty far reaching, as you guys can see on the screen there. It's quite a long weapon. So we summoned him for a rematch, and I decided, yeah, I won't be as cocky as I was before. And as you can see, we pretty much pull off a flawless on him, ending up getting the killing blow on the trade, which I'm okay with, but he didn't hit us for any of the match. So like I said earlier, it can counter short weapons, medium and heavy weapons also. It's really a diverse weapon, and that's what, in my opinion, makes it one of the better weapons for PvP. And when you play smart with the weapon, when you play a little bit more reactive, you don't really try to rush down your opponent all too much, because when you're the aggressor, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can definitely rush down with this weapon, but when you're overly aggressive, if you're fighting somebody who obviously spams out parries or is really good at rolling and seeing the startup of animations and rolling through your attacks, you're going to suffer. So play with caution with anything. Anytime you're dealing with a heavier weapon or a medium-sized weapon, you want to play a little bit more reactive. With the shorter weapons, you obviously will have to play a little bit more rush down, and as a result, you're a bit more susceptible to parries and to counters. So you have to kind of bait out the opponent and condition them with this weapon, and you can definitely rush in for pokes here and there to kind of surprise them, as you saw right there. The running attack, definitely something that can surprise opponents and get the job done. So really effective stuff, guys. Let me know what you think, though. It was definitely a surprise weapon for me. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate because you don't really see this weapon all too much in PvP, and I think it is an overlooked weapon, but when utilized correctly, I really do think that it is a strong weapon. So that's pretty much all I have for the analysis. I'm pretty much going to let the rest of the matches play out, put on maybe a bit of a tune. Let me know what you guys think, though, guys. Please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, check out the other Dark Souls videos. I love the haters, so keep posting the hate. It's the Dark Souls community. I understand that everybody has their own strong opinion, but like I said, my videos are to help out people who want to learn about the game, learn mechanics, and I play a lot differently than a lot of other people do, in my opinion. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Anyways, I'm going to end it here. Thank you for watching. Quantum is out.